Monday, the first rookies are supposed to report. So it's the Chiefs and the Texans rookies are scheduled to report on Monday per a league memo that just went out. Because remember, initially, I think it was like Friday this past week, this weekend, they were supposed to report. Now it's Monday for those two teams. The rest of the league is the rookies are supposed to report on Tuesday. And then the quarterbacks and the injured players are supposed to report this Thursday.
God damn.
But
coming pretty quick.
Despite the fact that everyone's tweeting they want to play, it seems like we're, I guess, just like the NBA and just like Major League Baseball, for whatever reason, these issues don't crop up. Although it's not really true. I guess those two sports, it cropped up a little. We kind of had some sense. It felt like a little further out that they were going to have some problems to work through.
I initially was going to use basketball and baseball as my example on this one. I threw the NBA out because they were completely different than baseball, who had not started yet, and football, who also had not started yet, right? Now, baseball had started training or spring training, but they had started spring training before Corona, kind of the virus, really felt like the virus, right? They started when it felt normal. It kind of hit, and then it snowballed, and it was clear they had to start, and then they never got off the season. Basketball, they'd already started. They were just attempting to finish. It was easier to get done. Plus, when you're telling guys, listen, there's money on the line. So I would kind of siphon them out. To me, though, baseball is a better example because it felt like that got really contentious on social media and negotiations, and it was just like, God, is this going to happen? Went back and forth. I feel pretty comfortable, and I feel like the media, and I give the players credit because historically you'd go, NFL players, the union, they're never on the same page. You got too many guys not making any money, living game to game. It makes sense. Like they just want to play to try to earn as much money. The number one thing that we always say with football, it's like a coal miner, right? It's like could end at any moment. Like no one's like Justin Verlander could end it. It's like once you make it, you're just like this guy's gonna have a 10-year career in basketball and baseball. And football, it's like this could go. You gotta get the strike while the iron's hot. I give football credit for just kind of corralling. Like they clearly had a unified message, though.
They're so late to the party because we've already watched the other two sports go through this.
But how could a lot of media members just suck this up like they're snorting cocaine? Like, come on, guys. Can we just take a deep breath? We literally just saw this. And at first, when I first saw like J.J. Watts, I'm like, oh, he's kind of pissed. And then once everyone tweeted it, I'm like, okay. It's like a corporate message. We know what's going on. This is it's not about the virus, even though, I mean, indirectly it is. It's all about money. Well, now, I don't have the details of the money. Now, I get they want specific protocols. But at the end of the day, the number one thing I've read, it's about preseason games. They're arguing. Like, I'm not overreacting to like, is the season in jeopardy? We did that for a month with baseball when a couple smart people.
But we did lose like 25 games potentially, right, with baseball.
Yeah, but they were somewhat limited, right? Because like their season date had already started. Like football, we all know at the end of the day could just push it back.
And then the commissioner said after, well, we were always going to play 60 anyway.
And part of with baseball, unlike football, who their economic structure more dependent on the people in the stands. Did it quite pencil for them to play a close to full season? That was one of their big sticking points. They wanted to go shorter, so the financial hit. Where in football, what's the number one thing they need to do? Get games on TV come fucking Sunday in September, November, whenever. It could be January. Because if I told you, well, they had to push back the season a month, is that going to be like, just you should have seen the ratings in January. No one was watching week 14. Like, that ain't going to be the case.
Yeah.
So, to me, yeah, it's like, could it have been a perfect world? One thing is abundantly clear with these leagues, and I'm sure if like you followed companies on Bloomberg, when you're dealing with billions of dollars, it's not black and white, right? If me and you are hassling going over a negotiation of $1,000, it's pretty easy to pivot left or right. When you're doing a negotiation, and this was definitely clear in baseball, it's like we're going to lose $4 billion. Like we need to figure this out. Same with football. How much are we going to lose? Figure out the way to have the, post this season, what's going to happen? How can we do it this year? The preseason games, say what you want for the NFL. Like they do get paid off that. Remember, I just remember like the ESPN crew gets a rep. The NBC crew gets a rep. Monday Night Football gets a rep. Jim Nantz gets reps. It's not like CBS doesn't pay for those games, right?
I also think one thing that makes this very different than most business, right, is that the employees, the players, have a union, and there's a
Are
lot of
powerful.
them.
Yeah,
It's
there's a
hard
lot
for,
of
like,
them.
I was talking to a buddy of mine on Friday who's a former NFL player, but still keeps in contact with a lot of current NFL players, and
Jerry Rice.
and Jerry was telling me that so much, like that he's just heard stories just from the
Oh, Barry Sanders. Okay.
Barry Sanders was saying. So I was talking to Namath, and he's like, "The last time I played, this wasn't an issue. I just got an off-season job. What's the big deal?"
Yeah.
So one thing he told me is like, he was just telling me about one of the most recent NFLPA conference calls they had just with players. And he said everything he's heard is just there are a million questions that the players are asking the Players Association that no one knows the answers to. So they, like, just the players can't. There's just too many of them, too many questions, not enough answers for them to all get on the same page before they can even tell the owners this is exactly what we need, right?
Well, think about this. If I'm Richard Sherman, that might be a bad example. Let's say I'm Aaron Donald or J.J. Watt. The guy that I usually call if I have a question would either be my coordinator or my head coach. The two people that I wrote down that the players communicate with both, or their agent would, the coaches and the front office, the GM or the assistant GM, the owners don't give a shit what they think. Like they have no, the shitty part is, like Andy Reid and Bill O'Brien, who are up in the air right now, whether, who knows by the time you're listening to this, if like the union held these guys back, if they show up over the next couple of days. Andy Reid's not trying to like screw over the players, right? He has nothing to do with any of this. Or Kyle. So Richard, because I was going to say Richard might just text Jed, and he probably would tell him what's going on. But who knows, because Richard's part of the union now. I don't know the rules there. I just think it's probably hard because the people, and really more than the front office, like if you're going to talk to the GM, your agent does, but you can, like if you want to talk to your head, Richard or Bosa or whoever can just text Russell Wilson, text Pete Carroll. Those guys don't know anything either. They're just waiting on the information coming from probably their, president of the franchise and the owner. And that's what I always say about football, that what makes the sport, and it's probably like this in all sports, but football is really complicated, unlike basketball, where you're just kind of playing games. You have like one practice like a week in the NBA. In baseball, it's you just take BP. In football, like part of practice and setting a schedule, right? We often hear like as weather changes, coaches are changing schedules around when to fly. It really is complicated, and no one making this decision, whether it's the owners, Goodell and his crew, have any clue how that actually works. It's not like, remember when Roger Goodell ran an NFL franchise for 2 decades? No, he's ran the money part. And that's where I think this gets really complicated, because football just in itself, you've been around football for years at college and pro. It's just a complicated operation because, like you said, there's a shitload of people there. There's all these individual groups in the team group. They all like practice separately and go to meetings separately and do things separately, but they're all kind of together. It doesn't really parallel the other sports and how you get ready. And then on top of that, right, it's like, well, they're just playing every game. Well, no. I mean, they don't fucking play really at all but once a week. And during training camp, the preseason games, especially nowadays, are kind of throwaways. So I wonder, like if you ask the coaches, I bet Andy Reid would be like, yeah, if we don't have to have preseason games, we can easily adapt. But the owners aren't the owners don't give a shit about like getting my third string guy reps. It's just all about the money flow and keeping everything. Like that's why everyone freaking out. And it was so typical. And the media gets used a lot, and I'll give the players credit. They use them to a T. The football media, because they're eating it up. And I don't have the energy to like, what are we talking about right now on Twitter? But I'll say it right here. It's like, come on, guys. It's clear what's going on. Tip my hat to the players for realizing how to utilize them to their benefit. But as we talked about before we hit record, do you think Jerry Jones, John Mara, the Rooneys give a flying fuck about a hashtag? I'm serious. And I'm not trying to diminish what the players are attempting to do, because they have, I give them like unifying, but it doesn't actually mean anything, right?
I saw Ross Tucker compared it to the video. Was it Michael Thomas that was part of the NFL video that got Roger
Drew
Goodell?
Brees.
Yeah,
the
and
Goodell thing.
and then Goodell comes out and does his video. But this is very different. That's not something that cost anybody any money, right? That was not a negotiation over television contracts or anything. That was just, hey, we want you to say something. We want you to do something symbolic. And by putting pressure on the NFL or on Roger Goodell, they got what they wanted, which was fine. But that's not this. This is not billion-dollar contracts, right? That was something different entirely. Now, I will say, I think from a media standpoint, they can just report on what's happening. Like, players did a bunch of tweeting, so the media reports players are doing a bunch of tweeting. All they can say is players are threatening not to play if they don't get what they want, which is true. That is what the players are doing.
I'm saying I'm seeing a lot of tweets like, I can't believe the NFL dropped the ball from just NFL reporters. I can't believe. It's like, come on, guys.
Well, yeah. I mean, look, the NFL just by and large is not going to wage this war out there in the open. And to your point, just like the NBA owners didn't, just like the Major League Baseball owners didn't, and they let the players tweet. Because I saw somebody tweet like, they're going to turn the tide of public opinion just like the Major League Baseball players did. Yeah, I don't think the Major League Baseball players did that. People started mocking them for saying, tell us when and where. Because they said, tell us when and where, and then no one showed up anywhere. So no one won that battle, like in terms of public opinion, right? Is that no one's walking around going, the players won.
Wouldn't you say the NFL, it feels like the union is kind of copying them and kind of acting like they...
Well, yeah.
They did accomplish one, because the one thing they accomplished.
I'm just saying that deal didn't get done on Twitter, even though people might act like it did.
I don't think they accomplished that much. I mean, it ended up being a 60-game season. Now I would say their main objective was the prorated salaries, but it doesn't feel like the NFL is saying we're cutting your salaries or anything. They're just acting. It's, to me, just reading. I don't have any inside information over this. I saw Kawakami tweeting about this. Like, the number one sticking point right now that they're trying to hammer home is no preseason games. That's one thing the NFL players want. No preseason.
So what do you think about that? Because the owners still want two. And was it Florio? Somebody wrote, well, maybe there will just be one, and there'll be local games. Like maybe you keep Niners Raiders, but that's not a local game anymore. Someone's getting on a plane. Like the Seahawks can't bust to any opponent. But the Niners also play the Bears. Like maybe that. But
how did baseball just do like Pirates Indians? Do they bust to each other?
Yeah, they must. I mean, I don't know.
Flu.
Or private flight. Like private flight's easier than a bus for most of them anyway. So I don't know. But you made the point to me. You said, well, and I thought it was a good point because I was like, it does make sense just to cut it to one. But then your point, which
not an original idea. I read this somewhere. Maybe heard it on a podcast. The one thing two preseason games, meaning every team gets one, gives them, because you're seeing baseball, I think, trying to do this right now, is give yourself the opportunity to have the protocols for your games, right?
Give everybody a chance to have a home game and a road game protocol.
Yeah, under this circumstance, right? Because they're used to, if it's just normal times, they know every team knows exactly how to do it. Now, maybe the Raiders or Rams, like, they would want the preseason game first time at their stadium, but Jed York or Pete Carroll in the Seattle or whoever, any owner that's still a carryover owner or not a new stadium, knows how to operate a home game. Well, under this circumstances, how many people do I need there? Do I need to get these guys tested first? How many of those people do I need to get tested? What's the number I need? How do we treat the visiting team? They normally do this. Do we need to make them go a different route? There just is a lot of unknown that, at least if you did screw something up, Cal Poly, you learn by doing. It would be beneficial. But if you're the players, I do get where they're coming from. In this weird year, if we're not only going to have one preseason game, why the fuck are we having any?
Right.
And this gets back to the coaches and GMs. Like, they have no say in this. You agree with that? Like, this is all just owners and money. It has nothing to do with...
Remember when the GMs didn't want to draft, how that went?
Yeah, like, push it back. It was like, nope.
I'm sorry.
And it turned out to be fine.
Did somebody say something? Well, now none of their players are signed. That's the Niners and the Packers are like the only teams. Actually, a few other players have been signed. But rookies are reported. John, Burrow isn't signed. Chase Young isn't signed. Herbert isn't signed. Isaiah Simmons isn't signed. Ruggs isn't signed. Judy isn't signed. Lamb isn't signed. Tua is signed. Mekhi Becton is not signed.
You're saying Kinlaw and Ayuk are signed.
Kinlaw and Ayuk are signed.
Henry Ruggs?
Not signed. Arnett, not signed.
My guess is on
most guys are not signed.
Because unlike baseball, that once it got into the season, it did feel like, well, maybe the owners were cool because they were going to take such historic losses with no season, and you didn't need to be a Harvard grad to like kind of do the numbers. You're like, well, I could see that, right? You're like, I could get it. That is not the case here, and I just think football. I would imagine we have a lot more answers than questions over the next 3 or 4 days because there is so much. Like it's July. By the time you're listening to this, it's July 20th or 21st. That's when teams get going. And that's when the owners start thinking like, okay, my checks are right around the corner. That's to me a huge part of it. And this is where the NFL is lucky. Their money all comes from television. Now they make money from the suites and stuff, and we'll get into Mark Davis. But I mean, their main money to just keep on rolling and just not go bankrupt or anything.
Yeah.
It's just TV.
Yep.
The TV money pays. You get profits from the TV money, even if you didn't sell a seat. And that's where baseball can't relate. And that was why basketball. They're like, well, we can take a little loss, but this playoff revenue for the TV,
the potential so
get
big.
it in.
Yep.
Yeah, it's huge, and that's the NFL had now two things on their side: time, and that's why all the media people that are saying like, I can't believe the NFL dropped. Nothing's happened yet. Let's just if this is going, I would say this is a disaster, right? If it's August 1st and we're still having this conversation, then it's like, God, what's going on? And just the TV thing, I think with the preseason games is probably more complicated than it sounds just on paper when the players are like, we don't want preseason games. It's easy to say that. And I think even people like me and you like, yeah, we could do without it. Though as a content creator, wouldn't mind a couple preseason games.
You know, I wouldn't mind too. I could use 2 preseason games, John.
See some reps. No preseason games. Again, as a content creator, I'd lean on the owner's side on that
My
one.
vote
Again,
is 2 preseason games.
I'm for safety, and I don't want anyone lose any guys.
Safely.
I could use some shit on the field happening to talk about. That's my vote. Again, no, we have no votes that matter, but I would vote for some games.
Maybe we should tweet that we want to play.
Do you agree that by about the latest July, like 25th, we're gonna have a pretty good idea on this? If not by like the next 2 days.
I would be in a time in which you should be shocked by nothing. I would be shocked if they don't play a full season because of this. Now, if there's other things, if like we're 8 weeks in and something crazy, okay. But I would be shocked if this holds
the universal report date, I guess, beside Texans Chiefs was July 28th for the normal players, right? For like veteran guys. Are you confident that everyone's showing up on that date? Because as of right now, recording this Sunday afternoon, I still am. Because
I'm less confident in that. Like I could see dates getting pushed around a little bit, or some players doing the thing where they don't show up.
I'm not saying 100%. I'm just saying I still think that money rules the day here, and there is a ton of money on the line.
I don't think we end up from July 28th to August 16th. Maybe we end up from July 28th to the 30th.
You know what? One thing I read is that one of the players' pushbacks on the preseason games, I guess some health experts have just said you want to avoid full tackling and touching as much as humanly possible, and even for training camp to push it back toward the end of training camp. And so it's like, how are we going to do that and then have the games? So what's the point? Just save it all till the regular season.
Right.
And I think it's an easy one to justify from the player standpoint. Yeah, when you just go, well, college does it every year.
Couldn't you counter? You don't play any preseason games. Yeah, that's true. But I mean, you could also counter. Before we fully start the season, let's have 2 weeks of just kind of doing some stuff and see how do we come out of this thing. Do we come out of it with every team suddenly has 15 positive tests? Or there's a couple here and there, but by and large, tackling, as long as we're testing and we feel confident the players that are tackling each other or they're blocking each other don't have the virus, then we'll be fine.